Welcome, everyone. This
Hello.
is Life and the Bitter Truth. My name is Vittorio.
And my name is Alex.
This podcast is our inaugural podcast. And what we're trying to do with this podcast is, seek to understand, the deeper aspects, sometimes painful aspects of life and all that it means to us. And how we can
Just grow
just
through it.
grow through it and talk about it. So that's kind of the general concept of our podcast. So
And today we're going to be talking about how my dad has entered the creative realm,
that's right.
where this podcast came from,
That's
its
right. That's right.
inception.
A creative world, because I come from an analytical world. I'm 35 years in finance and accounting, with 20 to 25 years with a broker's license, so real estate broker's license. So I work every day, and I think the issue is I've kind of gotten a little bit comfortable, so I've got more time on my hands. So now I'm deciding to maybe do a podcast. And how did I get here, right? I mean, this has been going on for a very long time in my own head. So a lot of stuff resides in my head before I take it to the surface.
Mhm.
So I spent, I spent weeks probably writing an outline, trying to understand, doing research, and coming up with titles and ideas on how a podcast should be, what it should be about, what I like, what I would like to hear. Because generally, you want to do what you like,
Mhm.
um, and research on what exactly are there podcasts out there similar to ours. I didn't find anything similar to the approach we're taking, but did all that research, wrote it all up, and then
3 different, completely different
yeah,
ideas.
yeah. So then my goal was to, and it's funny, I'm using Google Docs. Well, actually, not really. I think what I did was I converted it from Word doc into Google Docs, because my intention, unbeknownst to my daughter, was to share it with her. And I needed to understand how I can get it from um,
Google.
Google from Microsoft Office to Google Docs.
Right.
And I yelled out, I remember yelling out, I go, how do you save this darn document? The goddamn document isn't saving. I go, I'm concerned. And so she yells out back from her room. I was in my office at the time, and she just says, it's saved. What did you say?
You said it's automatic.
It's automatic. Yeah. So, this technology that it's not new technology. We've always had this ability to auto save and all that kind of crap, but I always turned it off. I never used it with any of my documents that I ever created or whatnot. So,
And then you asked me, okay, how do I share this thing with you? So I taught you how to
that's right.
how to
That's
share
right.
it and
Yeah.
to see who has access
Yeah.
to the document.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, is it completely public? I'm like, no, Dad.
Yeah.
It's just us on here.
In our world, in my world, I guess I probably would say is, we don't use Google Docs, because I think that's more for creatives.
Mhm.
Creative people use a lot of Google Docs so that they can edit documents on the fly or whatnot,
Mhm.
or maybe you used it in college too. I'm not sure how you did it, but
I've
whatever.
been using it since high school.
Okay, well there you go. So I never used it. So I used it as the platform to share it. So we had been talking about going to dinner forever.
Mhm.
Uh,
Specifically going to eat sushi, because my dad and I are the types of people, we're both very similar, where if we want to eat out, we'll just make up an excuse to eat at home, because we're like,
Yeah,
you know what,
we just eat at
there's
home.
something here,
Mhm.
there's some type
Something.
of thing you can put together,
or
leftovers.
whatever. Yeah.
But I had come home and I looked at him and I was like, hey, let's do sushi, not knowing that he was going to present a podcast idea to me, or to pitch to me, which normally I'm the one doing the pitching. So it was really interesting, because I was just like, oh shit, this is happening. Okay, cool.
Right. And so we went to dinner.
Got some
And
sake.
we got some sake. We got more than one sake, because
Yeah.
we were deep in conversation.
Well, and we were there for happy hour time.
That's right.
So
So that's okay. We were there for happy hour, but I presented the document to her, because I shared it with her. She had yet to look at it, I think, but she started looking at it at dinner, and we were just debriefing it, and it was kind of it was good. It was a good banter. We had good ideas. She had changes that she thought might be a little more fluid. Of course, you get, what do you mean changing my document? It's my baby. You can't just change
Right.
things. But yeah,
I totally agree. I understand where that comes
you
from.
need to have a little bit of humility in that situation or that process, because your idea may not be rational. So we
Well, and
went
it's just
through.
also interesting to kind of test and see, oh, did you mean to say this? And you're like,
Yeah,
yeah, this is exactly what I meant to say. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna write that then.
right,
Like, oh,
exactly, exactly,
I know what I meant. I just
right.
didn't write that on the page, which I know maybe in the past you shared with me that like typing, writing, reading has sometimes been difficult for you, but numbers and math was
Oh
never
yeah,
was
yeah.
never that.
Yeah, you creative types, you can write fluid and eloquent words and all that kind of stuff. It's great, but I can't do that. So I did all that. We pitched. I got you on board, and I think you were on board. I was a little apprehensive, not that you weren't committed. It was just I know you're busy. I mean,
Mhm.
you work all day long. You've got your own side hustles that you're doing. So this was another layer on top of your relationship. So it's just,
Yeah, a podcast at the in Q4 of 2024 was not on my bingo card this
that's right.
year,
That's right.
but
But it was on mine. So pitched
yeah,
it. It was received well by you, I think.
yeah,
At least I
definitely.
think it was,
Yeah,
right?
no, it was
So
it was really cool to kind of see your brainchild and see kind of where it came from and why. I mean, of course, I have a perspective of you that's very intimate. I mean, I know you're my father, you're my best friend, so I have that understanding. But it was cool to see it kind of in a different way.
right, right. So it's funny. We went down this road and we came up with an initial test pilot or test episode, I think what
Hmm.
it was. And while we were doing that, so I had that locked in my head, and from there we spent the better part of a couple more weeks, kind of just drafting
Kind of.
ideas after ideas after ideas. Even I remember one morning coming home from the gym. Um, I pulled over because I had an idea that popped in my head, and I think there was three ideas that I just sat there writing down in my Google Docs
Hmm.
document on my phone, which they're all connected
I
things.
made him
So,
download the app.
and it works. It works perfectly. So wherever I'm at, I can type in all kinds of
Yeah, he's like,
ideas.
does this sync from my computer to my phone? I'm like, yes, it's the same
Yeah,
account.
yeah,
And he's like, okay,
yeah.
perfect, thank
Yeah,
God.
exactly, exactly. So every idea that's popped into my head, and she's written down ideas as well. I mean, it's just they're obscure, and they just come into the psyche, and boom, down
Hmm.
on paper. We may or may not ever produce something regarding that particular topic, but it's part of the flow
Hmm.
of this podcast and how we've agreed that it's going to go. We went through this process of timetables in pre-production. These are all fancy words that I'm going to throw out here because I didn't know any of these words. I
And I
mean,
use
you
these
know the
words
words, but
every day.
these are for something for her where she's in that creative space working in entertainment. But for me, it's like pre-production. Okay, what do we do in pre-production? We just talk about stuff, or what are we
What do we
doing?
do in
So
development?
there you go. So we kind of all went through this. So we went through a kind of the outline, and then we started layering in what does where we put pieces of it, post production or pre-production, production, post production, and then distribution was the last piece of this puzzle. So at every stage of this process, I had been learning what does it mean to do pre-production. And we had our first pre-production meeting 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think it's been now,
Hmm.
where we sat down and we developed an idea list. We selected the idea and then we wrote
Brainstorm.
a script. We brainstormed on the ideas and then wrote a script.
Hmm.
And we even, I mean, I've been asked, well, how should we write a script? I mean, how does that work? So,
He's like, do you have any templates from
yeah,
work? I'm like, of course, I can write you one right
yeah.
now.
So was it, do I have a box? Do you have a box? We put our stuff that I'm going to say, you're going to say, and it's a little bit less structured as than that, but
But it does help. And I
yeah,
asked you, do you want me to highlight your name a specific color so you know when you're looking at your notes that you know this is your note or whatever?
that's because I can't see.
Well, that too, but it's also these are things that I do every single day at work, right?
Right,
What color is gonna attract your eye so you know it's
right,
yours.
right.
It's the smallest, maybe to some trivial things, but they do make it more efficient.
Right, right. So in this pre-production conversation, and we talked about this is a podcast of her and I, and we even talked about bringing on guests and or doing live streams. We
Hmm.
talked about remote guest. We're definitely going to do definitely remote guest, but generally, and we're going to actually do a few where it'll just be her.
Mhm.
It'll just be me on one or episode or another, talking about whatever it is that comes to mind or in our idea stream.
Right.
And that's kind of the platform in which we're going to approach all of these ideas, depending on who or what the idea is best suited for. But generally, it'll be both of us. So we went through this pre-production process, and it was going to taking a couple steps back at dinner. We had gotten done with dinner, and I was so pumped. And it wasn't the 2 bottles of sake that we downed, but I was excited. It was good. I was energized, and we had kind of an approach, a
Mhm.
go forward approach, which I like in this approach of doing this podcast. I thought it was a good way of ending and starting and ending the process for that evening. As I go back into where we talked about pre-production, man, it's using concepts that I'm not familiar with because I come from that analytical world where numbers are numbers, black and white, and there's just not a whole lot of science to it. For me, working in numbers for all these years. Leaving the creative side of my world was poetry. I would write poems every once in a while, and I
Mhm.
would share them, and I would read poetry books and that kind of stuff. That's kind of funny. I like that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, and you're definitely a reader. I think I got that from you.
yeah, yeah. So so as I went through this process, and I say I because I've been doing not the heavy lifting, because the heavy lifting is truly on the creative side of it, but the engineering of audio, video,
Mhm.
understanding the distribution side of it, that was days, not weeks, trying to understand. And we talked about doing this little test filming, and I did it on my iPhone. And all the havocs of doing things on your iPhone, and the audio was light, but it worked. It worked because we had the phone real close to us, and
And we just made it work with what we
we
had.
had that's right. So what I did from there is I went in and I spent days trying to research, editing softwares. Um, and of course, I needed to do a free one because I don't want to spend extra money on things that,
We
from
wanted to learn it too
I did,
first.
I did. I wanted to learn it first. There's so much in video, um, not to say the least. There's a shitload to do in audio as well,
Mhm.
and I found one software that seemed pretty easy for somebody who's elementary like me, or not even elementary.
Novice. Let's
So
say
not yeah,
novice.
exactly. And so I did that, and I put together. We filmed a test pilot, and it was we did maybe 2 takes, and we had to do that because obviously we were making so much noise in the background. It
Oh
was just
yeah,
it
I'm
was
notorious for touching my hair, which I'm gonna work on not doing
yeah,
that as much.
yeah.
But I realize, oh my God, I sound so monotone, or
I
I have
know.
no inflection of my
That's
voice, or I'm breathing into, too close here, too close there. I'm,
right, right,
touching my hands.
right.
It's weird because you're just talking normally, but then you realize, okay, for the camera, I probably should not sit this way or what.
Right,
It's
right.
something you got to learn. But that is all of this is all knowledge that you wouldn't
Right,
normally
right,
have.
right. So we filmed that, and then she kind of went away because she has a lot that she's got on her plates. And I took that video, and I went ahead and spent days trying to understand how to um, edit it. And I got to a point where I was um, uh, pulling my hair out what was left of it.
Hmm.
I paused, and then what we did is we immediately jumped back into artwork. I had read somewhere that we need artwork, so oh my god, that was another 4 hours of
It
sitting
just
down
seemed
and
like every time you and I touched base and synced on it, we're like, okay, we need artwork. Now we need a banner. Now we need this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I guess I hadn't really thought that far. And,
yeah,
I had never started a podcast before. It's been
right,
on my to-do list. It just
right,
hadn't happened yet. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, now we need this. Now
yeah,
we
that's
need that.
right,
Now we
that's
need a
right.
set. Now we need the studio. Now we need sound. Now we need mic. And it just is like, oh, dang. Okay.
So going back to this artwork, it's funny we had devised, I knew what I wanted. I knew the picture I wanted,
Mhm.
the one that's there and the one that's actually up on our site, but, I thought it had a good play on you and I.
Mhm.
Um, so I thought that was a good picture, and I can't remember where we took that picture, but, it was a good picture, and I liked it, and so what we
I
did,
think I know where.
we started throwing together. Where was it?
I think it was I can't remember if it was my younger sibling, my sister's birthday when we took her roller skating. I think she was like turning like 8 or 9.
No,
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know.
so because we were outside of I was wearing a tie-dye shirt, and I remember us taking a picture later on of her and I roller
Was
skating
it?
with the
Okay.
tie-dye
No,
shirt.
whatever.
I
No, that's
think we were
cool.
outside of
Okay.
the
Of this roller rink?
I
Okay.
won't dox ourselves what roller rink
No,
we go
don't do
to,
that.
but,
Yeah.
I think so. I don't
Okay,
know. I
that's
sorry,
cool.
that just hit me all of a sudden.
Oh, that's fine. But that was the picture, and then we started layering. Well, I didn't do anything other than critique because that's all
Mhm.
I was do. That's all I was good for.
I mean, no,
I
it's
picked the picture,
yeah.
and she did all of the
I
artwork and whatnot. And I think that
I asked you about color palettes
yeah,
and
color
fonts
palettes
and
and
things. It's good
fonts.
to ask those
Yeah,
questions.
and so it's funny. We actually were discussing. Why don't we just get her brother, my son, because he's a graphic designer, but he's way too busy. And yeah, that was the mentality that I had. And yeah, you probably had a different take on it, but
I don't know. I felt like at the time though we had both you and I had shared it with our partners this podcast idea, I think it felt still very sacred and
yeah,
I wanted to protect it. So the idea of sharing it outwardly with my brother or my sister or my friends, I don't know, it just I wasn't ready to do that. I wanted to make sure it was nurtured enough,
sure.
you
No,
know.
I think your sister, my youngest one, she's here, so she's hearing us and she's interested. What are you guys doing and whatnot? So she got an opportunity to listen to the podcast unproduced
Mhm.
or
Unedited.
unedited, sorry, in not out of post production.
Right.
And we asked her, "Would you listen to us?" She goes, "Well, I like the topic. I wouldn't listen to it because it's you two, though." Because
You're like,
it's too there's
great.
too familiarity here, so she's just like, I don't want to listen to my dad and my sister,
Yeah.
but she
Regular teenage
she
things.
liked it and she thought it was funny. She actually laughed a few times
Mhm.
because it had some connection to her. But yeah, so that artwork, we got it done, and we have other artwork we put into play, but we didn't finish it because I think this is what we settled on for now,
Mhm.
and there are other things that will engage the graphic designer. It's just when we can squeeze out his time because he's busy.
Exactly.
So yeah, so that that part of it was also another aspect of this podcast that you needed or what was required for these platforms. And so going back, I did this production or the editing side of the podcast and got it in there, and I was so excited. I remember. Running over there and saying, "Hey, look at this," and
You're like, I was able to add music in
I got
it.
an intro, I got music, I'm doing a fade in, a
You're like,
fade
isn't this so
out,
cool? I was
little
like, it is cool.
overlapping. I thought it was really, they call it fading out, fading in, fading out, which is really cool. I layered in the music at the back end as well. It was just I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
I think I played with it. I don't know, for 2 or 3 days before I just
Mhm.
said, "This looks good,"
Yeah.
and I don't know whether it looks good or not, but for somebody who's never done it, it
Yeah.
looked pretty good.
That's
So
pretty sick.
that was good. And then, sure enough, I think I did some a little bit more work, and I was sitting there. Oh my god, I got to now what? Now that I got this, what do I do with it?
Right.
And then that took days of research trying to figure that out. You think I would have done that on the front end? I kind of did, but I knew that multiple platforms had to be touched, and
Right. And I think we also just wanted to like get it out
well,
of
you
our
didn't. I
system
mean,
a little
I know
bit.
you didn't want to release it, but I know we needed to get out the first pilot, I guess, podcast out so we get it a little bit more comfortable.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't think I was, I mean, at the time we didn't have the studio yet.
Oh, I was. I mean, we were all. I was wearing a
I
sweatshirt. You
was
were
in my
wearing.
pajamas
Yeah.
probably.
So, but it was cool because it was
Real.
fairly unrehearsed,
Yeah.
and even this is about as unrehearsed as you can get. We know we have our general ideas of our episode, but this is real freeform, and we're kind
Mhm.
of walking through the timeline and what we did. It's just ridiculous how much I'm very, very, what's the word? It's very, I'm at I admire all of the production that people do that
Mhm.
go into YouTube and into podcasts because it is
It's
a
a lot of
lot of
work.
work.
It's a lot of
And I didn't realize how much work. I've been buried in this um, for weeks on end trying to figure out, everything and whatnot. So once we got this first test out, I literally layered in all this stuff and did it, and I was happy with it. I finally spent, like I said, I spent maybe 2 days, I think it was, trying to get this out on YouTube and then out to all the other podcast platforms. Which I'm thinking, well, I've got one file, but the software sent me the software when I exported it. It gave me two files. It gave me a video file and
audio.
an audio file, which podcast services only take the audio side of it. So these are all very interesting. So I'm releasing it on two different platforms or two different distributions platforms. Obviously YouTube, and then I decided on one primary platform for all of the distribution to all the rest of the podcast. So
Mhm.
that just took days to figure out and whatnot. So here we are. We got that done, and so we talk about this, as a side hustle. You're working your full time job. You've got your other side hustle. Vintage clothing, and
Yes.
what's the
So
what's the name of the vintage clothing line?
I have got a lot of side hustles, but one of them includes my vintage business. It's
Vintage
called
business.
Huerita Vintage, and I have a spot in
Where's
Monrovia,
Monrovia? There you go. See,
306 South Myrtle, if anyone is in the
there you
area.
go.
But
Vintage clothes.
it's
What
really
what was the address one more time?
306 South Myrtle
There you go.
Avenue.
Yeah, and
Come
you've
and check it out.
yeah, you've got other things
Yeah,
in the mix.
I
So
teach, I perform. I'm a poet, so I get paid to perform and to teach, and that on top of my regular day job, selling my books.
yeah,
There's a lot
a lot
of
going
things
on.
to do, and I
Right,
knew we were recording today,
right.
so I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna put makeup on in the morning because I know I'm gonna put it on when I get home. I need to
You went to work
get,
without makeup?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it just be like that sometimes, but I went to work.
Because you're behind the scenes. You're not in front of the camera.
Exactly.
Gotcha,
I went
gotcha,
to
gotcha.
work, I
Okay.
did my thing, came home, knew I was going to record, right? Record. And now we're recording now, but even tomorrow,
Yeah.
going to go to work, going to hit up my store after work,
Gotcha, gotcha.
make sure it's resupplied for the week,
That's right.
come back home. It's just like a constant
Right.
thing.
And then I think we've got a production meeting on Thursday, a pre-production meeting on Thursday. I can't remember that. I look at the calendar because what we're doing is the goal for us is to sit once a week
Mhm.
and
To
do
brainstorm.
do a
Yes.
pre-production meeting, lock in the episode for our next one, and then come into it with an idea of what we want for the following week.
Right.
And every single week we're going to do this. One locked in, one ready, or on the mound,
Or
as they
one
say.
banked, as
Oh,
we
banked
say.
in the entertainment. business.
I've
Okay,
been
one
giving
banked.
him so many
So,
new like verbiage, and
so
it's so
good.
funny because it makes me laugh because I'm like, we just say this,
Okay.
And someone told me recently
I have
that
to
I
write
was,
that one down. Banked.
yeah,
Okay, good.
someone told me recently that I was thinking about doing a project with that I ended up not going forward with. But he said, "Oh my God, you speak like so professionally, like we're at work." I'm like, well, dude, this is,
What you do?
I mean, we're not necessarily friends, so we're talking about a project. That's kind of what we're doing here. I don't really, yeah, no, it's just interesting because I was
Gotta keep
using.
it professional.
I
Otherwise,
think all I said was, yeah, I'll send it to you EOD. End of day. I'll send it to you at end of day, But he's just like, okay.
it's funny you make that comment about being professional when you're doing work. That's the mentality I take. I'm very serious, and we're getting stuff done. We're asking questions. We're shooting the shit back and forth, and there's no nonsense involved. There's no pausing. We're getting through it because your time is important. My
Mhm.
time's important. So I think that from that aspect, we're really. I think we haven't yet to get into a rhythm, but
Mhm.
we're getting there. We're
Yeah.
slowly moving through that rhythm of sitting down once a week and scheduling and putting it down on calendar and filming. Because as an example, I was thinking we were going to film Monday. Today's Tuesday, and today's Monday or Tuesday. I don't
Today's
remember.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, so whatever.
We always plan to film
Yeah.
Tuesday, but it's
Yeah.
true. It
Yeah.
falls.
We didn't put it on. I didn't put it
Right.
on my calendar that way, and because I was so busy for the last.
And I just did a really crazy, under 48-hour trip in Vegas where, I mean, it wasn't crazy. It was just family
No, I
stuff.
was about to say.
Yeah, no, it was just family stuff, but I didn't bring my calendar with me because
Ah,
I'm like, I don't
okay.
need my calendar. But I knew we're filming after work.
Whatever. I didn't, I didn't pay
But
attention because
Thanksgiving too.
we had Thanksgiving, and then we had, I had some new equipment that I wanted to test. And the problem that I was having was I couldn't get the video and the audio to sync. And it was driving me bananas. I think one night I was here, I think I started in the morning, and I didn't end till like 11 at night because just trying to figure out why isn't this syncing. I did research, I was talking to people. Everybody was telling me how to do this and how to do that. And I was doing everything. And then one guy, I remember responding back to me, says, "Did you check your specifications on your laptop?" I told him I was using a laptop. And I said, I go, "Oh, okay." And sure enough, I guess
isn't this thing just supposed to work?
I guess I should have figured that out because it worked on the first one.
Right.
But apparently my laptop is topped out on creative abilities. So
It's
spent
very
a lot.
old.
Yeah,
I mean, not very old. It's just planned
old.
obsolescence.
It's old. So I finally had to figure out a better solution. And when I figured out that better solution, I took that test file, which it pops out in both audio and video in separate tracks on the audio side. And boy, just synced up. I cut out the old audio, and boy, I was happy.
And you slept like a baby that night.
It was great. It was great. So these are the learning processes of doing doing all this, this entire podcast and trying to understand, the entire process beginning to end. It has just it's been fun. It's been not nerve wracking, but it's just been fun, and it's just been frustrating. I think is probably the word that comes to mind. There was many nights where I was calling my partner, and I was telling her that I can't seem to get this goddamn thing working right. Don't know what's going on. She says, "Well, did you?" She actually made a comment which I wasn't paying attention to her. I can't repeat that to her because she'll get upset. But I wasn't paying attention to her, so she said, "Did you check your computer?" Duh. No, I didn't.
Whoa.
So it was just this, learning process of whatnot. I guess the bandwidth on my computer just wasn't there. But once I got that resolved, it was certainly easy. And then, of course, the audio equipment is always a lot to learn. Whether you're dealing with a microphone or a mixer, or whether you're plugging this into the
Even
computer.
just filming on the iPhone, like, granted, yes, the iPhone can really do almost everything.
Yeah.
But there's just so many little things, little tweaks, and it just reminds me how when I'm at work and we're on set, any noise.
Oh yeah.
The cam ops people, the sound guys, they look over and they're looking at us like with these eyes, and we're like, "Oh shit, sorry."
Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
It's funny. In devising the studio or coming up with the space, it's a small space. So what I had to do was take out the table I was using and put in a different table, do it at a different angle. And the only reason we're still filming on an iPhone is because the camera that I have, which is a very good camera, I don't have an extension battery. Neither does yours.
I don't either.
And I don't think we can get one for those two cameras. So that's part of the problem we have is we have the camera's a little older.
Right.
And I think they run out on battery after about 30 minutes. So that was a problem for us. So,
and we're just trying to obviously use, whatever we can.
We're trying to do this on a shoestring, and that's kind of the approach, as you get better and things unfold, then obviously the investment can grow on it. But for now, the iPhone seems to work, as does the audio equipment that we've acquired. I spent the better part of I think it was last Friday hunting. What's that stuff on Facebook? Marketplace. And it's great. I didn't know and people
You're like,
sell
do
all
I need a
kinds of
Facebook
shit.
to use Marketplace? I'm like,
I actually have Facebook, but I never use it for anything.
Right.
And so it's kind of funny. I'm buying things on Facebook Marketplace on the cheap, and some of this stuff is brand new. I wonder how things are so brand new. I mean, you can buy a brand new laptop. Don't know why it's it's a sealed box, and I don't know what truck that fell off of, but whatever. I'm not making commentary.
Right.
People got their own side hustles to deal with.
Exactly.
But I found, people who, buy stuff and resell it, or they just don't need it anymore. So I've got, The important thing was to get some lighting and some, other equipment that we needed, and I got it on the cheap because I think that was the right approach to take. So, um, we went through all that process, and I think that we're ready for, I think, what might be a more dynamic, and the studio might be, and we're still learning these mics,
Right.
because in my ear I'm hearing cutting out sometimes when I step away from the mic. So that's because I don't know how the hell they use the mixer at all.
And I'm
But
hearing my very monotone, sometimes heavy breathing, and I'm like, okay, I need to chill out.
yeah, so I mean, some of this stuff will hopefully will evolve over time, and I've tapped into so many people that have just been so helpful. I mean, they're responsive, and the people in, not that I'm part of this community.
From the interwebs.
Yeah, but I'm not part of this community because I don't think I am. But people have just been so nice, and they're willing to respond, and
Encouraging.
they've got this or they've got that, and they're saying, "Well, do this, tweak this, do this," and um, it helps. And that'll be an ongoing thing as I learn through this process. So, from a side hustle, I don't know. I mean, if this unfolds into something bigger, great. If it doesn't, at least at least we're having fun,
Exactly.
and we're talking about stuff. And I think therapeutically, it's a good thing,
Hmm.
because that's the goal. The goal is to be really open, really raw about stuff
Vulnerable,
that happens. I
yeah.
mean, I'm not going to bust out what happened today, but there's obviously stuff that happens in lives. And I immediately, if she were to go to our idea list, it's on there. It's the last idea I wrote, and it's a great idea. And I think it's germane to how people live their lives. There's stuff in our evolution that we need to get past. So
And I think
it's good stuff. So
there's always something to learn, especially from our parents who, I mean, it is also their first time on this earth. You've been married twice and divorced twice, and you have a partner now, and you're in your, almost 60, early 60s, and
wow, it's the way it
uh,
sounds.
it
Divorced
doesn't
twice and almost
it doesn't
60.
no, it's, and
Wow.
I don't mean for it to sound
No, no,
crazy,
no, no. I
but
understand. I understand.
there's
Shit happens.
there's a lot to learn
that's the
for
reality
sure.
of it. Divorce happens, and sometimes relationships don't happen.
Hmm.
They don't work. They don't work for a host of reasons. There's we carry lots of baggage in our existence, and life creates even more baggage. So as individuals, humans, as we the goal is to keep growing. That's
Hmm.
kind of what this podcast will kind of articulate in one form or another, is just those painful aspects that we all go through. We all go through. I mean, I don't care who you are. We all go through in one form or another.
Hmm.
Um,
And there will be some fun
there's always
aspects
fun. Yeah.
to this, different segments, like a segment that I want to share today. Um, that's just gonna bring some light.
Okay. Cool. I like segments that
Do
bring
you want me to?
light.
Do you want me
Let's
to?
do it. Go.
Okay,
Knock it
cool.
out. Knock it out.
So, when we talk about learning and finding new tools and ways of communication, my partner and I really love this card series. I don't know. I don't think
Don't.
I'll.
I
I don't think
You
no
wanna
no
share
free
it.
ads here.
No free ads. Exactly.
But we love pulling cards from these different decks, and I pulled a card prior to us starting, just so I wouldn't make that much noise in the mic.
Okay.
But
There we go.
I haven't shared it with my dad. But the card says, mind you, this segment is called "Questions I Always Wanted to Ask You."
Okay.
Um,
I know this one.
so
Don't know the answer.
sometimes I'll bring the question to you personally, and other times we can pull from the deck and just kind of have it be fun and random. But
Sure.
this question is, what am I most qualified to give advice about?
What
So
are
you can
most-
tell me, and I can tell what you're
Okay.
most qualified.
What am I most qualified to give advice for, or what are you?
Mhm.
Okay. What are you most qualified to? I think the creative side of you know hearing that, I'm hearing that kickback in the ear. So I think you have the ability to weave an understanding of the entertainment industry that I sure as hell don't. Poetry, what elements of poetry you need to get out. And it's funny. I mean, you've been doing poetry for as long as I can remember. You've got 2 books out. You have one that's out there that I can't remember what happened to it, but I don't think it was finished. But I mean, layers and layers
Lots
of
of stuff.
torturous writing to get something out. And I remember one time at one of your presentations, I I wanted to spin off a
Oh, one of
riddle,
my readings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to spin off something that I
I,
wrote.
I I looked to the crowd and I had asked, okay, it was an open mic last
That's what it was, open
summer.
mic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
last
open
summer,
mic.
and I was leading it with a good friend of mine, and I looked to the crowd. I'm like, okay, does anyone else, before we close the mic, and I just saw my dad's hand shoot up in the air, and I was like, oh shit,
That's
what is
right.
he gonna say? Because I always say every time I have an open mic, I'm always tell people like, come up here, you can just spitball, you can rant, it can be, slam, whatever you want.
Right,
And I
right, right.
didn't know what he was going to
Back in the
pull
day, we
out.
called it soapboxing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I didn't know what he was going to pull from his sleeve. And then you pulled this freaking beautiful poem called 3 Stars
That's right. That's
about
right.
his 3 kids. And I was just like, what the heck?
Hey, I got the talent too. You can't have it. So I think, if I were to answer it about you, you've got that creative side which you can share, and you actually do. You actually teach poetry, and you teach it to urban children.
Urban
Is that what they
children.
call it? I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but yeah, urban kids. Kids in the inner city and that kind of stuff. I think is the
Yeah,
best way to
kids
describe
kids
it. So
that don't have access.
don't have access to it, right?
Exactly.
And that's probably the political way of saying it. I
Right.
liked urban kids. I liked inner city, but whatever. I understand.
Different generations,
Different,
of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
different societal rules of how we can how we talk about these things. But okay, so what are you most qualified to give advice about? I mean, I know what I go to you.
That's easy. 60 years worth of shit that
You're
I've
like
dealt
everything.
with. Everything, exactly.
I think what I go to you most about is probably financial advice, because you come from that background.
Right.
But it's interesting. The numerous times you and I have walked into a Prada store, I tell you, "Oh, Dad, this is the bag I want to get one day," and he's just like, dude, just freaking get it already. Like, stop talking about it. And I'm like, well, I thought you taught me to save and do all these things. And he's just like, you have to also enjoy life.
That's
You
right.
deserve nice things.
That's right.
And then we just walk out anyway. But that's probably the biggest
Finance,
thing that I
okay,
go
okay,
to you
finance.
for.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Finance advice.
Part of raising kids, I think, is also teaching them the benefits of saving, obviously, and of course the what that means as far as saving for the future, and those are important parts of being an adult, I guess that's the way to
Yeah, and
describe it.
having
So
to pay off loans, and how we deal with school loans and credit cards and all these things that
Sure.
they don't always teach us in school. So I know a lot of kids don't have that ability to go to a parent and say, hey, like, how the fuck do I get out of this? Sorry, how do I get out of this issue here?
that doesn't get taught in school and doesn't get taught in families sometimes. A lot of, I didn't even get taught how to spend my paycheck or saving money. Yeah, maybe a little bit of that, but generally what I earned, I spent. I remember early on, I can't remember what year it was. That's a long time ago, but we were working another side hustle. And I was cleaning cars with a buddy, and we were doing cars every day of the week after a certain hour, after each of us got off of work, and then we took all that money and we blew it on Friday night sushi,
There
and
you
that's
go.
what we did. And that got tiring very quickly, but we did it for some time.
Yeah.
And yeah, could we have saved it? I was already working, so for me, it was fun money,
Right.
I mean, early on learning aspects of finance. I mean, buying real estate is an important part of wealth growth, and I think that's what I've been instilling in these kids of mine. You got to do it. You got to bite the bullet and just do it. And
Because
everything
once you
else.
get in, you're
Well,
that's the hardest part, is just doing it.
yeah, there's aspects to it. You got to save money to make to buy a home or whatnot, but there's things you got to do. So saving money is an important part of that. And so finance is the only thing I can. I mean, hopefully I can share more wisdom than just
Oh, of course,
financial.
of course,
but
of course. But I think
yeah.
that's like the biggest thing that I can think of right
Sure.
at this moment. But that was a good
That
question.
was a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good.
And I
I'm glad.
mean, the advice that I have for you, just as we continue to do this podcast, is just to be open to being more creative. I think growing up, I always thought of my father as being very rigid, like numbers guy, and
Right.
typing on the computer. And then I'm like, oh, Dad, like, actually, let me not bother him right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you had a lot of responsibilities, and you had a lot of your work required wasn't as flexible, or didn't have as much breadth as maybe mine does now. But I think it's cool to see you kind of dipping your toes into this world that I've been kind of in and I refuse to give up on.
I don't know if I'm dipping my toes. I've always been on the creative side. I've just had it under the covers,
Right.
so I could
True.
layer. I could layer you with lots and lots of poems that
Right.
I've written over the years. So
True.
I used to have I can't remember the one of these websites where
Mi-
you could upload your uh, poems.
Really?
I don't remember I don't remember what it was called, but you could do that, and so I had a whole series of
Barely
poems
learning
out there.
about this now.
So yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, and maybe I'll share one or two with
That would be so awesome.
with our podcast family, because that's what I'm gonna call them now, the
The
podcast family.
podcast fam.
That's right. That's right. So
That's awesome.
who knows? But dipping my toes in creative, I think I've got a couple feet in the creative side.
Yeah, you
I
do.
just don't
That's-
know the business side of it because
Right.
I've never done it. Obviously, this is the first what I would call it. I think delving into the production
Mhm.
of
Well, it's also a new world for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Podcasting is growing at such an exponential rate, and this is kind of its first,
yeah, it's it's from all that I've learned, it's a medium that is new.
Mhm.
A newer medium, though it's been around a while. It is an explosive medium. Lots of podcasts out there, and gaining was it viewership
Mhm.
or listeners is an important part of this process that we're going to go through, and certainly hopefully we'll get people to get excited about us two clowns and how we
Right.
present information and some of the stories that we'll share. So
Mhm.
because like I said, there's lots to cover, and like I said, every day there's an adventure or something that comes up in family situations
That's worth
or
talking about.
that's worth talking about. I think everything's worth talking about, and we're going to be as open as we can without divulging layers of personal. What do you call it? There's a word you guys use that everybody uses now. Doxing. Doxing. I don't know what you're about.
I thought you were going to say trauma. We do use that
Yeah,
word.
I think trauma. If you express trauma, that's the word people want to use. But I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't use the word trauma. You got whacked upside the head for doing something wrong. You didn't go running to the police or the what's that government agency that protects kids?
CPS.
That's right. So I've been threatened. You guys threatened me with that once.
I do not believe I ever threatened
It's
you.
like, go call them. In fact, let me call them for you. And
Oh,
let's see how
Lord.
far that goes. So.
And that's probably
And they'll be on my side.
and parenting styles and
Yeah.
new parenting styles. That's definitely something that is on our brainstorm
Sure.
running document, because I think our generation thinks very differently now.
I think this thing, like we've been talking, this podcast is going to cover a whole bunch of topics and whatnot, and so that's kind of the goal of the podcast is touch on that. Some of the stuff where you walk in the door and you see your kid, upset and go, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I don't sugarcoat it that much.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I say, "What the hell's wrong?"
Mhm.
Not, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. What's going on with you?"
Right.
Get over it. What's the problem? Let's talk
Just-
about it.
Yeah, just let it out.
Exactly. As I actually told you, maybe you need a glass of bourbon to relax.
Oh my God. is
Something
so
like that. That or a Valium. I'm not sure which one you needed, but yeah.
Or a
So
shot of tequila.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the that will be something that would
Not the best coping mechanism. We do not recommend.
No,
yeah,
please. Yeah, that's not that.
This is not medical advice.
Yeah, well, it's a little medical.
Oh well.
Little-
Just
little-
had to put it out there, but
of course.
definitely
So-
there's lots of stuff coming down the pipeline. We also say that a lot.
Yeah, we do. Is that
Yeah,
a
we
lot of
do.
stuff coming down the pipeline? Okay,
Yes,
that's good to
lots
know.
of stuff coming down the pipeline. Really excited to just do this with my dad and learn about you and ask you fun, interesting questions, and I don't know,
Yeah.
just kind of break down the wall.
Yeah, so I think we've covered our goal of kind of sharing with all of you, our genesis here of this podcast and where we hope to take it. So we want to thank all of you for taking the time to tap in, listen to us, and
And if you have any
Have us rant.
suggestions,
Yeah, definitely.
ideas, things you want to learn about, know about, different experiences, love to take to take that feedback as well.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
Life in the
guys.
Bitter Truth. You can hear us on all the platforms, YouTube,
He's so
and all
good
the
at this
all the
now.
podcast platforms.
Yes.
Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeart Podcast.
All of them.
I think I'm Amazon Music as well. So I've got them on. We're on everything now. So we're gonna keep on pushing this stuff out, and we hope you all comment, listen to us, and give us feedback, because I think that's a great aspect of learning what we're doing right, what we're not doing right. So thank you.
Thank you,
And
guys.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Bye.